Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at the world of cybersecurity, specifically the folks in charge of keeping our data safe. CISOs.
Chief Information Security Officers.
Yeah, exactly. We've got some really interesting articles here, one from Titan HQ, one from Security Magazine, and another from Dark Reading.
All focused on the same question, it seems.
Are CISOs becoming the scapegoats when those increasingly frequent and sophisticated cyber attacks hit?
Well, when you look at the data, it's a pretty valid question to ask. Security Magazine, they found that 99%, staggering 99% of CISOs worry about losing their jobs because of a breach.
99%, seriously.
Yeah, 99%, and get this, 77% are extremely concerned. I mean, it's got to be a huge amount of pressure on those folks.
It really makes you wonder if that level of pressure, is it even productive?
Right, and it's not just like a feeling, There's actual data to back it up.
Yeah.
Titan HQ, they did a survey, 612 CISOs, CIOs, and other InfoSec pros, and 45% were worried about being fired after a cyber attack.
So almost half of the people directly responsible for cybersecurity are like looking over their shoulders constantly, worried about being the fall guy if something goes wrong.
That's right. That's a lot of pressure. And then you've got InfoSecurity Europe. They did this survey back in 2017 asking, who's most likely to be fired after a data breach. And it's interesting. 40% said the CEO.
Oh, interesting.
But only 21% said the CISO.
So maybe the public, they kind of see the CEO as ultimately responsible, even if the CISOs are the ones, feeling the heat every day.
Could be. And this whole idea of responsibility, there was another survey, this one of 9,000 consumers in 11 different countries, and 70% said, yeah, they believe the companies themselves are responsible for protecting customer data.
So that's a lot of public pressure, too, on top of everything else.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dig into this pressure cooker a bit. The Titan HQ study also said that, 66% of CISOs expect their jobs to become even more stressful this next year.
Yeah, and it's not even just stress. It's making people leave the field. That same study, 44% are considering lateral moves, and 40% are thinking of leaving cybersecurity entirely.
Wow. That's a really alarming statistic. What's making things so tough for them? I mean, what are some of the main contributing factors here?
Well, all three of these articles, they kind of highlight some of the same issues. The skills gap, that's one of the big ones. 70% of the respondents in the Titan HQ survey said lack of competent in-house staff is the most likely cause of a data breach.
Right. So it's not just about having a great CISO, it's the whole team that matters. You can't really fight those sophisticated attacks without a solid team.
And then, not enough budget. Nearly 40% in that Titan HQ study said their security budgets are flat or, get this, actually shrinking.
So it's like trying to fight a wildfire with a garden hose. No wonder everyone's stressed.
And then the bad guys,
Yeah.
Attacks getting more and more sophisticated. It's hard to keep up.
It's like a constant arms race.
Yeah, and almost half of those surveyed by Titan HQ are also worried about securing, all those IoT and mobile devices.
It's just so much to deal with, and it sounds like it's only getting harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got this, perfect storm brewing, right? CISOs are under pressure, attacks are getting more sophisticated, budgets are tight, there's a talent shortage. It's kind of bleak. But what happens, long term when all these cybersecurity folks, they just get burned out and leave?
It's not good. It's like you lose all that experience, all that knowledge, and that just makes organizations more vulnerable, Plus, when they leave, it's not like you can just snap your fingers and find someone to replace them.
Which brings us right back to that skills gap we talked about, right?
Yeah.
70% of those folks in the Titan HQ survey said lack of competent staff is a big problem. So if we're already struggling to find people, how do we fix it when the experienced people are, heading for the exits?
It's tough. I think we need to, attack this from a couple different angles. First, got to invest in training, development programs, both within organizations and just more broadly, at schools and stuff.
So inspire the next generation of cybersecurity pros. Show them it's a good career path.
Exactly. But you also got to keep the people you already have, right? Make it a good place to work, reduce burnout. Don't just blame people when something goes wrong.
So it's like creating this environment where everyone feels responsible for cybersecurity, not just the CISO.
Yeah, exactly. A cultural shift. We got to move away from the blame game and make it more about collaboration, sharing information, constantly learning from each other. When there's a breach, it's not about who to fire. It's about what happened. How can we do better next time? How can we prevent this in the future?
So an environment where people can learn from their mistakes without being terrified of getting fired.
Yeah, absolutely. But that takes buy-in from everyone, from the top down, the CEO, the board. They got to make it clear that cybersecurity is important. They got to put money behind it, and they got to create this culture where it's everyone's job to think about security.
So it's not just a tech problem, it's a business problem.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, we've got some ideas for solutions, but, I think it's important to bring this back to our listeners. Like, what does all this mean for them? What can they do with this information?
Well, for folks in the cybersecurity field, you're not alone, right? It's a tough job. There's a lot of pressure, but we can make it better.
Okay, so what can they do? I mean, where do we even start?
Well, push for better training.
Yeah.
Make sure you've got the resources you need and try to build that culture of collaboration. Talk to each other, share what you know.
So create that environment where everyone feels responsible for cybersecurity. And what about the folks listening who, maybe they're not in cybersecurity? What can they do?
Be informed. Pay attention to what's going on. Learn how to protect yourself, how to spot those phishing emails, things like that.
Okay, so be informed, be careful. Anything else?
Support the companies that are doing things right. Ask them about their security practices. Advocate for better data protection policies. Choose to do business with companies that are actually taking this stuff seriously.
Yeah, good point. We can, vote with our wallets, right? Incentivize companies to do the right thing. And what about within companies? What can employees do?
Speak up. If you see something that looks fishy, report it. Don't just assume someone else will take care of it. We all have a responsibility here.
Right. Shared responsibility. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to that quote from Steve Cobb, the one about CISOs becoming expendable. It really got me thinking. If we keep doing what we're doing, are we just going to be stuck in this cycle of breaches and blame forever?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? But I think we have a choice. We can learn from the past, we can adapt to what's happening now, and we can prepare for the future. But it takes work. It takes a real commitment to do things differently.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about, the whole system, right? The culture, the mindset.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's a pretty hopeful note to end on. We can actually do something about this. It's not hopeless.
Definitely not. We have the power to change things.
I love that. So, listeners, the future of cybersecurity, it's kind of in our hands. We can choose to build a better, more secure future, one where we're all informed and empowered. Until next time, stay safe out there.